The gold standard, Hit 'Em Up, and the blueprint of a perfect diss. Some diss tracks sting. Hit 'Em Up detonated. Before the track even existed, the tension between Tupac and Biggie was already spiraling. Pac believed Biggie and Diddy had prior knowledge of the 1994 Quad Studio shooting, where he was hit 5 times. Then Biggie released Who Shot Ya? Not aimed at Pac, but dropped at the worst possible time. Pac took it as a taunt, and the fuse was officially lit. That's the backdrop for Hit 'Em Up, a diss track that didn't bother with metaphors or subtlety. Tupac goes straight for Biggie's reputation, his circle, and even his personal life. Lines so direct they've never been replicated with the same level of force. This wasn't clever rap sparring. It was a scorched earth response from someone who felt genuinely betrayed. And once you open a video with a diss track this iconic, the only logical next step is to drop straight into the opposite end of the quality spectrum. When diss tracks collapse on impact, Deji's Ungrateful. If Hit 'Em Up is a masterclass in justified anger, Ungrateful is, well, a reminder that not every disagreement needs to become a diss track. The beef didn't come from the streets, a betrayal, or even music. It started on Twitter, which should already lower your expectations. A few petty arguments between Deji and Melle Mel snowballed into a diss track that somehow managed to be aggressive, confused, and unintentionally funny all at once. The delivery stumbled, the insults felt rushed, and the writing had the energy of someone who remembered they had homework due at midnight. For a track meant to settle a rivalry, it mostly settled the question of whether YouTuber diss tracks have aged well. And after a detour into the world of accidental comedy, we jumped straight back into a diss that reshaped an entire rap feud. 50 Cent's Life's on the Line, a ruthless opening shot. Some diss tracks feel strategic. This one felt like 50 Cent, circling Ja Rule's entire career with a red marker. The tension started when Ja Rule was robbed for his chain during a music video shoot, and the person behind it had ties to 50. Ja later claimed the incident didn't bother him, but according to 50, Ja suddenly began acting hostile when they crossed paths in a club. That tiny crack in the relationship turned into a full-blown feud, and 50 used Life's on the Line as his first decisive counterattack. The track is packed with taunts about Murder Inc., direct shots at Ja's image, and a delivery that made it clear 50 wasn't warming up. This was the fight. What made the diss even more legendary was the rumor that 50 wore Ja Rule's stolen chain in the music video, turning the whole situation from lyrical warfare into symbolic humiliation. A brutal diss like that sets the bar high. So naturally, the next track crashes straight into the floor. B.O.B.'s No Future, when a response doesn't respond to anything. If there's one thing worse than a weak diss track, it's a diss track that accidentally insults the person making it. The backstory here is simple. Tyler, the creator, took a jab at B.O.B. on Yonkers. A pretty clean, classic Tyler move. Instead of brushing it off or firing back with something sharp, B.O.B. released No Future, a track that tried to clap back but mostly clapped off beat. His biggest insult? Calling Tyler a dolphin. Not exactly the career-ending punchline he thought it was. The track is full of half-formed threats, stretched metaphors, and lines that sound like they were written in the queue at Starbucks. Tyler never responded, and honestly, he didn't need to. The track had already taken care of itself. Which brings us neatly back to another diss that actually did land, and reshaped one of the most high-profile feuds in modern rap. Kendrick Lamar's Meet the Grams, precision, personal detail, and pure devastation. Some diss tracks attack what you said. Meet the Grams attacks who you are. The feud between Kendrick and Drake had been simmering for years, but things escalated once Kendrick decided to drop any remaining politeness. By the time this track arrived, he had already made it clear he wasn't interested in friendly competition anymore. He wanted to dismantle Drake's entire public image. And unfortunately for Drake, Kendrick had an alarming amount of personal information at his disposal. Meet the Grams takes the diss track format and twists it into something colder. It's structured like a series of letters. To Drake, to his parents, Even to his son, Kendrick questions Drake's integrity, his relationships, and his responsibilities as a father in lines that feel less like rap punches and more like character evaluations. The tone is icy, calculated, and uncomfortably specific. The kind of specificity that makes you wonder how long Kendrick was quietly collecting ammunition. It's the type of diss that doesn't just hurt your reputation, it makes people look at you differently. Which is probably why the next track feels even weaker by comparison. Drake's The Heart Part 6, a misfire wrapped in a clever title. On paper, the idea was smart. In execution, not so much. Drake released The Heart Part 6 as a preemptive strike, trying to hijack Kendrick's long-running The Heart series. The logic was simple. If Drake drops Part 6 first, maybe he can frame the conversation. Unfortunately, the content didn't match the strategy. Instead of tackling the accusations head-on, Drake defended himself with lines that felt strangely detached from the seriousness of Kendrick's claims. He insisted he was too famous to be what Kendrick implied, made jokes at the wrong moments, and even managed to disrespect real abuse victims while trying to clear his name, a move that turned the tide of public opinion faster than Kendrick could have hoped for. It's not that he didn't respond, it's that the response made things worse. And with that stumble behind us, we go back a few decades to a diss track that set the example for how to turn betrayal into musical artillery. Ice Cube's No Vaseline. When a diss track becomes a final verdict, some rappers leave a group quietly. Ice Cube left NWA and then dropped a diss track so sharp, it practically sealed the breakup in permanent marker. The tension began when Cube left the group over financial disputes, issues he'd been vocal about since their early success. NWA responded by taking shots at him on their EP 100 Miles and Running, making it clear they didn't appreciate the exit. Cube stayed silent for a while, but when he finally answered, he didn't bother easing into it. No Vaseline is a masterclass in controlled fury. The track opens with sampled insults being thrown around, building tension until Cube finally cuts through the noise and begins unloading on every member of his former crew. He calls out mismanagement, exposes internal issues, and dismantles the group dynamic line by line. It's direct, ruthless, and delivered with the kind of confidence that comes from someone who knows he made the right decision leaving. This is what a diss track sounds like when someone has been holding receipts for far too long. And naturally, after a diss this iconic, we take a sharp left turn into one that barely left the ground. Grandmaster Melle Mel's Kickback, a diss track that apologized for existing. Some diss tracks fail. This one failed so badly that Melle Mel apologized for it a week later, which tells you everything. The backstory is almost comical. Eminem made a quick jab about Melle Mel's steroid use on a track, and instead of letting it slide, Mel decided to respond with Kickback, a diss track that felt dated the moment it dropped. The delivery was stiff, the insults were confusing, and the flow wandered off in directions even the beat couldn't follow. It didn't sound like a veteran checking a younger rapper. It sounded like someone being forced to freestyle after being woken up from a nap. Fans didn't take it seriously. The rap community moved on instantly, and Mel ended up retracting the whole thing with an apology that honestly hit harder than the diss itself. If Ice Cube showed how to weaponize frustration, Kickback showed how quickly momentum disappears when the execution doesn't match the legacy. But now that we've covered one of the genre's most painful misfires, it's time to jump right back into a diss track that proves how dangerous Eminem can be when someone actually gives him a reason. Eminem's Quitter, when a diss track turns into a public warning. If there's one rapper you should never provoke lightly, it's Eminem, and Everlast learned that quickly. Their tension started with small jabs exchanged across different tracks. Everlast slipped in a shot at Eminem. M fired back with a line on The Real Slim Shady, and Everlast escalated again. That's when Eminem stopped playing around and released Quitter, a diss track that sounded like a focused demolition project. Eminem's delivery is sharp, relentless, and aimed at stripping Everlast of every remaining piece of credibility. He brings up personal history, declining relevance, and even uses Everlast's 1998 Heart Attack as brutal material. The intensity builds until the song flips into a beat switch. Eminem's own recreation of Tupac's Hit 'Em Up, where D12 joins in and turns the diss into a full group assault. It stands out as one of Eminem's most unforgiving responses, a track where he commits entirely to overwhelming his target instead of trading quick punches. And after a diss this heavy, the next one barely stays upright. Machine Gun Kelly's Rap Devil, a viral moment for the wrong reasons. When MGK dissed Eminem, he fired off a response with the confidence of someone who completely forgot who he was aiming at. The feud began years earlier when MGK tweeted about Eminem's daughter Haley, calling her hot while she was 16 and he was 22. Eminem took note, understandably, and kept his distance until Kamikaze, where he finally addressed the situation. MGK responded instantly with Rap Devil, a diss track that went viral in hours and hit 100 million views in just 2 weeks. But popularity doesn't equal quality. The writing leaned heavily on surface-level insults, mocking Eminem's beard, calling him old, and delivering bars that felt more like light teasing than career-threatening shots. The visuals didn't help either. Eating cereal in the music video wasn't exactly the intimidating power move he thought it was. If anything, the track felt like MGK desperately searching for angles while hoping the shock value would carry the rest. Eminem replied with Kill Shot, dismantling MGK's entire argument in minutes, and the internet unanimously agreed who won. Though to be fair, MGK did gain more mainstream attention from the feud, just not the kind that helps in a battle of diss tracks. Tell me which diss I missed in the comments, and tap like and subscribe if you're feeling generous.